You said as a woman, you had dated so much of that. I want to ask the women out there, or even the men who date other men, or like whoever dates the masculine, I want to ask you, have you had a similar experience where you have encountered or dated a man who can't stand his ground, couldn't hold true to commitment, wasn't disciplined enough to show up for the relationship, when the times got tough, tried to get attention and affection elsewhere? Because I also want to tell you one important thing. We are responsible for what we attract into our lives. And so even as the feminine or as a woman, if you attract a man like that, it is because your femininity is feeling a wound from somewhere. Your femininity is limited or has been conditioned to be, you know, not expressive enough, or you don't believe in it enough, even though it lives inside you. And so that's why we attract, like, you know, the opposites like that, to be able to trigger that within us. And it's so important, even through this conversation, to understand how healing the father wound can create healthy feminine. And that's why I want to ask you specifically about Genell, because you're a woman, you identify as the feminine. I cannot, unfortunately, give perspective from there. But I want to ask, I know that you as a girl, you lost your father when you were really young, you said, right?
9.
How old were you? 9. Yeah, that's
9.
Yeah, so you've lived basically 2/3 of your life without a father figure, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Or your biological father figure. So what I want to ask you is, as a girl, wouldn't that obviously influence you in some way that you would have had to overcompensate with developing a masculine energy of your own because you didn't have that guidance or that masculine energy as from a father figure? And did that in many ways also repel relationships?
Oh my goodness. This is great.
Dropping all the good.
I'm so excited to talk about this. First things first is I've done so much studies, and it has been said that when a daughter doesn't have the father figure in their life, that father figure is what helps them shape into their femininity. And when I saw that, I was like, I remember my ex-boyfriend at the time, I was like, this is why I didn't have it. All correlates. And you wouldn't think that. You would think your mother, if you don't think logically, you would think, oh, my mom. No, it's if your father was in your life, that's where you structure the feminine. And when you don't have that, like me, you're figuring it out on your own. And having been raised by a mother who was a mother and a father to me, all I knew was, I really struggled with the feminine until now. I'm sure hopefully you guys can feel feminine energy. But before, I was very in my masculine, where even in relationships, I would tell my partner I want them to be more masculine in a nice way. And I realized that I was so in my masculine that they wouldn't even be able to get up there if I had to come down to my feminine.
Right.
And it did affect relationships.
Would you, if you noticed the type of men you attracted, would you attract men, you'd say, who were not confident within their own self? And so if they felt any challenge from you, they would try and like overcompensate with either anger or with being loud or with even trying to like push back in some way because they didn't feel secure enough to, you know, in their own masculinity?
Yeah, I would say that. Or the men were more in their core feminine. Because obviously I'm in my trauma, so I'm attracting men who also had mother or father wounds.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I just wanted to add to, you know, from the developmental psychology perspective for you guys who are wondering, how does having a father affect, you know, creating the feminine? So the masculine identifiers, and this is just evolutionary and developmental psychology. Please read into it if you guys want to know more about it. But the masculine stands for stability, structure, safety, guidance, etc. So think about, you know, a lot of stable, grounded-esque type of things. The femininity stands for flow, stands for creativity, stands for, in many ways, abundance, stands for belief, trust, faith, etc. Very magical, like flowy-based feelings or adjectives, so to speak. Now, if there isn't enough of that stability from the masculine, which either any sort of parent, if there isn't enough of that stability or groundedness from the masculine, then the feminine does not feel safe enough to develop because it doesn't feel safe that if it flows, it can always come back to this structure and it can trust on it. A little girl needs to know that daddy's there to protect her no matter what happens. That's why that concept has been used in ads, in movies, everywhere, because it is a baseline of that the little developing feminine needs to know that it has the safety of the masculine, no matter what happens, no matter how it fucks up, no matter if it goes like near and far, that it will have that. And therefore, it allows it to flow more. It allows it to be more creative. It allows it to take more chance. But if it doesn't have that, then it restricts that level of flow, creativity, movement, dance, all of it, because it has to be more constrained. It has to be its own stability and structure, which now limits it from being creative and feminine and open.
Right.
So
yeah, that was great.
Thanks for bringing I just thought I'd take that opportunity to tell folks about that. So, but some people may be wondering, like, what is the definition, so to speak, of a father wound? I hope people have got it so far just from conversation of what we talked about, but I don't know if you want, Genell, to give everybody a definition.
Absolutely. So I would say, in my words, it's like the lack of a sacred bond between the father and daughter, which then when we don't have that, it results in many problematic ways. Right. All the way from lack of boundaries, people pleasing, not feeling enough, needing to look externally for validation, everything that I've done in my past. I'm personally attacked. Feeling unworthy of love. So there's a lot of things, but it all comes down to not having that sacred bond, just like what Yats was saying, with your father.
Right. You touched on an interesting one where you said people pleasing and unworthiness, right? Wouldn't you say that from the feminine's perspective, because I'll come back to the masculines in a second, but from the feminine's perspective, that if you had a strong, stable, like we talked about, strong, stable masculine to support you, to be able to make you feel safe, to tell you that no matter how you fuck up, what you do, how you flow, that you are valuable, that you are trusted, you are safe, right? Don't you think that the feminine would not need to people please? It would not need to abandon itself to achieve some other connection with a wounded masculine, etc. That it would feel more sure of itself.
Absolutely not. Yeah, because there would be no reason to please, because we know we're whole and complete with or without. So if this person doesn't come, see you never, the next person will.
Right. Exactly.
So
thank you.
Yeah, not having that bond with your father, everyone listening. I ignored it for so many years up until like all of my 20s, until it hit me in the face. And I honestly was in a really dark place of like suicidal ideation where I needed to end up going to rehab. I'm getting really vulnerable right now. And it's because I couldn't take the ignoring for so long. Deep down, we know that pain is still there, but our protective self can be so good at pretending like we have it all together until an event in your life, which a lot of my clients come to me with like severe breakup or getting triggered and parenting their child, that they realize, oh my God, this is my father wound or this is my mother wound. So it's really important to realize that a lot of us may not even be aware, but if you really think back of what you lacked from your father, there's a really good chance that there is a father wound.